Welcome to Zoe Crossdressing. Lane reclined on the king-sized bed, her eyes following Ma's movements with a mixture of amusement and concern. "You know," she said, breaking the silence, "we could always go down to the boutique and browse. No pressure to buy anything." Mac paused mid-step, his gaze darting to meet Lane's. "I don't know," he mumbled, running a hand through his short brown hair. "What if someone recognizes us?" Lane sat up, swinging her legs off the bed. "Mac, honey, that's the beauty of staying at a place like this. Everyone's too wrapped up in their own world to care about what we're doing." The corner of Mac's mouth twitched, a ghost of a smile threatening to emerge. "You always know what to say, don't you?" "It's a gift," Lane replied with a wink. She stood up, smoothing out her sundress. "Come on, let's at least window shop. We can pretend we're looking for something for me if anyone asks." Mac hesitated for a moment longer before nodding. "All right, but promise me we'll be discreet." "Cross my heart," Lane said, making the gesture dramatically. She linked her arm through Mac's and led him towards the door. "Now let's go see what fabulous finds await us." As they stepped into the corridor, the opulence of the hotel surrounded them. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings, casting a warm glow low on the intricately patterned wallpaper. Their footsteps echoed softly on the marble floor as they made their way to the elevator. Inside the lift, Mac's reflections stared back at him from the mirrored walls. He studied his features, wondering, not for the first time, how he might look with longer hair, maybe a touch of makeup. The thought both thrilled and terrified him. Lane squeezed his hand reassuringly as the elevator descended. "Remember," she whispered, "you don't owe anyone an explanation. We're just two people out for a bit of shopping." The doors slid open, revealing the hotel's lavish lobby. A handful of guests milled about, their designer clothes and confident postures screaming old money. Mac tensed, but Lane's steady presence beside him kept him moving forward. They crossed the lobby, heading towards a corridor lined with high-end boutiques. The first shop window displayed an array of glittering jewelry, but it was the second that caught Mac's eye. Mannequins posed in elegant dresses and skirts, their fabric shimmering under the soft lighting. Lane noticed Max's gaze lingering on a particular emerald green dress. "That would look stunning on you," she murmured, just loud enough for him to hear. Max's cheeks flushed, but he didn't deny it. "Do you think?" he started, then shook his head. "Never mind, no. Go on," Lane encouraged, turning to face him fully. Mac took a deep breath. "Do you think we could go in just to look?" Lane's face lit up with a brilliant smile. "Absolutely, come on, let's see what they have." As they entered the boutique, a bell chimed softly overhead. The interior was plush and intimate, with racks of clothing arranged artfully throughout the space. A saleswoman approached them, her smile professionally and welcoming. "Good afternoon," she greeted. "Is there anything I can help you find today?" Lane smoothly took the lead. "We're just browsing for now, thank you. My friend here has excellent taste and I always value her opinion when shopping." Mac felt a flutter in his chest at Lane's casual use of her. The saleswoman nodded politely and retreated, leaving them to explore on their own. They moved through the boutique, fingers trailing over soft fabrics and sparkling embellishments. Mac found himself drawn to a rack of blouses in various jewel tones. He paused at a sapphire blue one, admiring the delicate lace detailing along the neckline. Lane appeared at his side, holding the emerald dress they'd seen in the window. "Want to try it on?" she asked, her voice low and encouraging. Max's eyes widened. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," he whispered back. "No pressure," Lane assured him, "but if you want, I can run interference with the saleswoman. Say it's for me and you can try it on to see how it falls on someone closer to my size." The idea was tempting, more tempting than Mac wanted to admit. He glanced around the store, noting that they were the only customers present. Maybe just for a minute." Lane beamed at him. "That's the spirit. Wait here, I'll go chat with our helpful friend over there." As Lane engaged the saleswoman in conversation, gesturing animatedly about some imaginary event she needed a dress for, Max slipped into one of the changing rooms with the emerald dress. His hand shook slightly as he undressed, careful not to make too much noise. The fabric of the dress was cool and smooth against his skin. As he slipped it on, it took some maneuvering to get the zipper up, but when he finally turned to in the mirror, his breath caught in his throat. The dress hugged his body in all the right places, the color bringing out flecks of green in his hazel eyes. For a moment, he allowed himself to imagine how he'd look with long hair, maybe some earrings. A soft knock on the door startled him out of his reverie. "Everything okay in there?" Lane's voice came through. "Yes," Mac replied, his voice barely above a whisper. It's beautiful. Can I see?" Mac hesitated for a moment before cracking the door open. Lane slipped inside, her eyes widening as she took in the sight of him. "Oh ma," she breathed, "you look absolutely gorgeous." Tears pricked at the corners of Max's eyes. "Really?" Lane nodded emphatically. "Really. How do you feel?" Mac turned back to the mirror, smoothing his hands down the sides of the dress. "I feel right," he admitted. "Like this is who I'm supposed to be." Lane wrapped her arm around him from behind, resting her chin on his shoulder. "Then that's all that matters. We don't have to buy it today if you're not ready, but know that I support you no matter what." They stood like that for a moment, both of them gazing at Max's Reflection. Finally, Mac took a deep breath. I think I want to buy it. Lane squeezed him tightly. Then let's do it one step at a time. Okay, Mac nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness bubbling up inside him as he changed back into his own clothes. He couldn't help but run his fingers over the dress one last time, marveling at how such a simple piece of fabric could make him feel so alive. When they emerged from the changing room, Lane smoothly handled the purchase, keeping up the pretense that the dress was for her, the saleswoman. Lane stretched out on the wide hotel bed, watching Mac pace across the room. His nervous energy made her smile, though she could see the worry in his eyes. You know, she said casually, breaking the quiet, we could walk down to the boutique downstairs. Just look around. No pressure to buy anything. Mac stopped and glanced at her. I'm not sure, he muttered, brushing a hand through his short brown hair. What if someone recognizes us? Lane sat up and swung her feet to the floor. Mac, that's the great thing about places like this, she said softly. Everyone here is busy with their own lives. No one's paying attention to us. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. You always know how to make things sound simple. Lane laughed lightly. It's a talent. She straightened her sundress and walked over to him. Come on. We'll just window shop. If anyone asks, we'll say we're looking for something for me. Mac hesitated for a moment, then gave a small nod. Okay, but let's keep it low-key. Deal, Lane replied with a playful salute as she linked her arm through his. The hallway outside their room was grand and quiet. Crystal chandeliers glowed above them, and their footsteps echoed softly on the polished marble floor as they walked toward the elevator. Inside the lift, mirrored walls reflected Mac from every angle. He caught his own gaze and studied it thoughtfully. For a moment he imagined himself with longer hair, maybe even a touch of makeup. The idea made his heart race. Lane noticed his expression and squeezed his hand gently. Remember, she whispered, we're just two people going shopping. That's all. The elevator doors opened to the luxurious lobby below. A few well-dressed guests crossed the room, chatting casually. Mac felt his shoulders tighten, but Lane's calm presence beside him kept him moving. Soon they reached a hallway lined with elegant boutiques. The windows glittered with jewelry, handbags, and designer clothes. One display in particular caught Mac's attention, mannequins wearing flowing dresses beneath soft golden lights. Lane followed his gaze and noticed the emerald green dress in the window. That one would look amazing on you, she said quietly. Mac blushed. You think so? Lane tilted her head with a smile. Want to go inside and see it up close? Through a moment's hesitation, Mac nodded. A soft bell chimed as they stepped into the boutique. The store felt warm and elegant, with neatly arranged racks and gentle music playing in the background. A saleswoman approached them politely. Good afternoon. Can I help you find anything? We're just browsing for now, Lane replied smoothly. My friend here has great taste, so I'm getting her opinion. Mac felt a small flutter in his chest at Lane's casual use of her, but the saleswoman simply smiled and left them to explore. They wandered between the racks, touching soft fabrics and bright colors. Mac paused when he saw a delicate sapphire blouse with lace along the collar. Lane appeared beside him, holding the emerald dress from the display. "Want to try it?" she asked quietly. Mac's eyes widened. I don't know." "No pressure," Lane assured him. "But if you want, I'll keep the saleswoman busy and say the dress is for me." Mac glanced around. The store was empty except for them. "Maybe just for a minute," he said. Lane grinned. "Perfect." While Lane chatted with the saleswoman across the store, Max slipped into the changing room with the emerald dress. His hands trembled slightly as he put it on. The fabric felt smooth and cool against his skin. When he finally looked in the mirror, he froze. The dress fit surprisingly well, the deep green color highlighting the green flecks in his hazel eyes. For a brief moment, he imagined longer hair, maybe earrings, maybe even a different future. A soft knock sounded on the door. "Everything okay?" Lane asked. Yes, Mac replied quietly. It's beautiful. Can I see? Mac opened the door slightly and Lane slipped inside. Her eyes widened. Mac, she whispered, smiling warmly. You look incredible. He blinked back sudden emotion. Really? Really? She rested a hand on his shoulder. But what matters most is how you feel. Mac turned back toward the mirror. I feel right, he said softly. Like this is who I'm meant to be. Lane wrapped an arm around him supportively. Then that's all that matters. They stood there for a moment, both looking at his reflection. Finally, Mac took a deep breath. I want to get it. Lane squeezed his shoulder. Then let's do it. One step at a time. After changing back into his own clothes, Mac carefully folded the emerald dress in his arms. When they returned to the counter, Lane smoothly handled the purchase, keeping the story that it was for her. But as they walked back through the hotel lobby, Mac carried something much more important than a shopping bag. Quiet, growing sense of confidence about who he truly was. The saleswoman smiled as she complimented Lane's choice, completely unaware of who the dress was truly meant for. With the shopping bag in hand, Mac stepped out of the boutique feeling strangely light, as if a secret he had carried for years had finally loosened its grip. Sharing that moment with Lane made everything feel less frightening and more real. As they walked toward the elevator, Lane glanced at him with curiosity. So, she said playfully, what's next? Pool time? Or maybe dinner at that fancy restaurant upstairs? Mac thought about it for a second. Then a shy smile appeared. Actually, I was wondering if we could look for a few accessories, he said. Something that would go with the dress. Lane's face brightened instantly. Now that's a great idea, she laughed. I noticed a shoe store down the hall earlier. Back on the boutique level, they entered the shoe shop. Shelves sparkled with elegant heels, stylish flats, and polished sandals. Mac's eyes quickly settled on a pair of delicate strappy sandals with a small heel. Lane followed his gaze. Those would match the dress perfectly, she said. Mac nodded, surprising himself with how eager he felt. When the salesperson brought his size, he carefully slipped them on. The sensation was unfamiliar but exciting. Walk a little, Lane encouraged. Mac stood and took a few cautious steps. First he wobbled slightly, adjusting to the balance, but with each step he grew steadier. You're doing great, Lane said with a proud grin. They feel different, Mac admitted, smiling at his reflection in a nearby mirror. But in a good way. Like I'm discovering a side of myself I never let out before. Soon they left the store with another bag, this one holding the sandals. Back in their hotel suite, Mac carefully hung the emerald dress in the closet and placed the new shoes beside it. For a moment he simply stood there, admiring them. To anyone else they were just clothes and shoes, but to him they symbolized something much deeper. Lane walked up behind him and wrapped her arms around his waist. I'm really proud of you, she said softly. Mac swallowed the emotion rising in his throat. I couldn't have done this without you. The afternoon drifted by peacefully. They spent time by the pool, ordered food to the room, and laughed about small things. Yet Mac kept finding his thoughts returning to the dress waiting quietly in the closet. As evening approached, he finally walked over and gently touched the soft fabric. Lane, he called. She appeared in the doorway with a warm expression. Yeah, I'd like to try it on again, he said nervously. Her smile widened. Of course. Together they took the dress from its hanger. Lane helped him step into it and carefully zipped it up. And the shoes? She asked. Mac nodded. Once he was fully dressed, Lane stepped back and looked at him with shining eyes. You look amazing, she said quietly. Mac turned toward the mirror. For a moment he simply stared. The reflection felt both new and strangely familiar, like meeting a version of himself he had only imagined before. He smoothed the fabric along his sides. I feel like myself, he said softly. Maybe more than I ever have. Lane rested her chin on his shoulder as they looked into the mirror together. That's because it is you, she said. All of you. Tears filled Mac's eyes, but this time they were tears of relief. Thank you, he whispered. Later that night they decided to stay in. Lane ordered room service while Mac sat carefully on the bed, getting used to moving in the dress and heels. He found himself practicing small gestures, laughing at how natural they began to feel. When Lane finished the call, she sat beside him. Maybe tomorrow we can find some jewelry, she teased. Mac laughed. One step at a time, but maybe. They spent the evening talking and enjoying dinner together, the atmosphere warm and relaxed. For the first time in a long while, Mac felt comfortable simply being himself. When the night grew late, Lane made a gentle suggestion. You don't have to change if you don't want to, she said. Just be comfortable. Mac smiled gratefully and pulled her into a hug. What did I do to deserve you? He asked. Lane laughed softly. You were honest. That's enough. The next morning sunlight slipped through the curtains. Mac slowly woke and noticed the soft fabric against his skin. For a moment he was confused, then the memories of the day before returned. He sat up quietly, realizing that something inside him had shifted. For the first time in years, the reflection waiting in the mirror didn't feel like someone he had to hide from. Felt like someone he was finally ready to understand. Mac slowly woke as sunlight filtered through the curtains. The soft fabric against his skin reminded him of the silky nightgown Lane had picked out the evening before. For a moment he simply lay there, letting the memory of everything that had happened sink in. Beside him, Lane shifted slightly and opened her eyes. Good morning, beautiful, she murmured sleepily. Mac felt warmth rush to his cheeks, but he couldn't hide the smile that formed. Morning, he replied quietly. While getting ready for the day, Mac felt a tug of war inside his mind. Part of him wanted to wear the emerald dress again. Another part of him felt nervous about stepping outside where other people might see him. Lane noticed the hesitation. How about a middle ground, she suggested gently. We'll order breakfast to the room. You can wear the dress here where it's just us. And later, if you feel comfortable, maybe we'll take a little walk around the hotel gardens. Mac let out a relieved breath and nodded. A few minutes later, he slipped back into the emerald dress. The fabric felt just as perfect as it had the day before. It was strange how something so simple could make him feel so much more like himself. They ate breakfast together on the balcony overlooking the hotel's green gardens. The morning air was cool and peaceful. As they sipped coffee and shared pastries, Mac found himself relaxing more and more. Without realizing it, he began mimicking small gestures he'd always noticed in women, holding his cup more delicately, sitting with his legs crossed neatly at the ankles. These were things he'd always wanted to try but had never allowed himself to. Lane watched him with a soft smile. You know, she said thoughtfully, maybe we should think of a name for when you're like this. Mac looked up in surprise. A name? Something that fits your feminine side, Lane explained. He paused, thinking. He had never allowed himself to imagine that far ahead. Lane studied him for a moment before speaking again. What about Mackenzie? It's close to Mac, so it might feel natural but still different. Mac whispered the name slowly. Mackenzie. The word felt unfamiliar at first, but also exciting. A smile spread across his face. I like it. Lane clapped her hands softly. Then it's official. She grinned playfully. Good morning, Mackenzie. Hearing the name sent a small thrill through him. Felt as if a hidden part of himself had finally been given permission to exist. So, Mackenzie, Lane continued with a teasing smile, what's the plan for today? Mac, now Mackenzie, thought for a moment. I think, she said slowly, surprising even herself, I'd like to try that walk you mentioned. Lane's eyes brightened instantly. Really? That's amazing. But remember, we'll go slowly. If you feel uncomfortable at any point, we can come right back." Kenzie nodded. She stood and smoothed the front of the dress nervously. "Do I look okay?" Lane stepped closer and gently took her hands. "You look beautiful," she said sincerely. "But more importantly, you look happy." Taking a steady breath, Mackenzie followed Lane into the hallway. Every step felt both exciting and terrifying. The heels clicked softly on the floor as they walked toward the elevator. When other hotel guests appeared nearby, Mackenzie felt her heart race. But something unexpected happened. Most people didn't seem to notice them at all. A few offered polite smiles or nods, nothing more. Inside the elevator, Lane squeezed her hand reassuringly. "You're doing great," she whispered. "Just be yourself." When they reached the lobby, it was busier than before. Guests chatted near the reception desk, bellhops rolled luggage across the marble floor, and groups sat talking in comfortable chairs. Kenzie held Lane's hand a little tighter. "Remember," Lane murmured, "we're just two friends enjoying our morning." Kenzie nodded and focused on walking confidently. Soon they stepped outside into the hotel's garden area. Fresh air and the scent of flowers surrounded them. The gardens were beautiful, curving pathways, colorful flower beds, and a fountain sparkling in the sunlight. As they walked slowly along the path, Mackenzie began to relax. The gentle breeze lifted the skirt of her dress slightly, and the warmth of the sun felt comforting rather than frightening. Couple passed them on the path and smiled politely. Kenzie returned the smile without thinking. Lane glanced over. "How are you feeling?" she asked. Kenzie thought about it carefully. "Honestly," she said. She looked around at the peaceful garden and then back at Lane. "I feel really good." There was a quiet happiness in her voice. "It's strange," she continued, "but it also feels wonderful. Like I'm finally letting myself be who I truly am." Lane squeezed her hand proudly. "I'm so proud of you, Mackenzie," she said warmly. "That takes real courage." The words stayed with Mackenzie as they continued their walk. Being called brave felt unfamiliar, yet comforting. She had never thought of herself that way before. But maybe Lane was right. Choosing to show the world who she truly felt like inside did take courage, more than she had ever realized. By the time they finished their walk around the gardens, Mackenzie found herself wishing the moment wouldn't end. The morning air, the freedom she felt, and Lane's constant support made everything feel safe. She hesitated before speaking. "Lane, do you think," she began softly, "we could stop by one of the boutiques? Maybe look at some jewelry like you mentioned earlier?" Lane's face immediately brightened. "Of course," she said excitedly. "There's a little jewelry shop I noticed yesterday. I think you'd love it." With a small, nervous smile, Mackenzie nodded and followed her back toward the hotel. Inside, they walked along the corridor lined with elegant stores. Soon they reached the boutique Lane had mentioned. The shop was small but beautifully arranged, with glass displays filled with sparkling necklaces, delicate bracelets, and elegant earrings. As they stepped inside, a gentle bell rang above the door. A woman behind the counter looked up and greeted them warmly. "Good morning, ladies. Is there anything I can help you find today?" The simple greeting sent a quiet thrill through Mackenzie. Being addressed as one of the women standing there felt surprisingly natural. She glanced at Lane, who gave her a supportive smile. "We're just browsing for now," Mackenzie replied politely, a little surprised at how easily the words, and even her softer voice, came out. The saleswoman nodded kindly. "Of course," she said. "Take your time and let me know if you need anything." Mackenzie smiled back, feeling a growing sense of confidence as she and Lane began looking through the glittering displays together.